Welcome back in. It's so good to see you today. Still the 21 regular season, still the Kansas City Chiefs. Our topic today is Orlando Brown. We'll talk about maybe trading him in the offseason, maybe paying him in the offseason. We're going to go through a lot of stuff about Orlando Brown today, so I don't know how long this video will end up. But I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being with us. I do want to say here at the outset, I'm going to say some negative, critical things in this video. That's not what I enjoy. I get no joy like, some pompous, arrogant people that I hear over the airwaves out of ripping people apart or criticizing people or whatever. I get no joy out of that. But I always have an eye out for how do you improve whatever team it is we're talking about. And I talk about the Kansas City Chiefs a lot, but no matter which player I'm evaluating or which team I'm looking to improve, that's always the number one goal is, where are we at? How did we get here? And how do we move forward and get better? So that's the complete angle I'm coming from here today. Not everything I'm going to say about Brown will be negative, but some of those things will be. And again, it's all with an eye towards looking towards the future and how does Kansas City get better, okay? So I feel obligated to say that. But again, I feel obligated to report what I'm seeing as I do these videos as well. All right, let's talk about Orlando Brown. Has played left tackle all season for the Kansas City Chiefs. They traded for him in the offseason. He came over from Baltimore. There was an exchange of draft picks, but the result of that was basically Baltimore got about 3 or 4 draft picks, pretty good draft picks, while the Kansas City Chiefs got Orlando Brown. Okay, so that was the offshoot of that. He's going to be a free agent in the 22 offseason, and the question is, do you go ahead and pay him that big contract, 4 or 5 years and anywhere from $13 to $20 million a season? The assumption 2 or 3 months ago was that, of course, Kansas City's going to do that, and why would they trade for him if they weren't going to? But my thoughts on that have changed as this season has gone along. And the more we've seen here from Orlando Brown, the less likely I am to be paying him, and the more likely I am to maybe sign him to a free franchise tag and then trade him based off of that, kind of like they did with D. Brown a couple of years ago. Let's start about analyzing Orlando Brown, okay? Run blocking. He's a huge guy. This guy is massive, and he's a road grader when it comes to run blocking. He's actually done a good job this season. He's moving to his target. He's getting his hands and his helmet on the guy, and he is blocking these and he's sustaining them. Okay, he's doing a good job. He's not dominating. When I say road grader, it's not like he's dominating every guy that he comes in contact with, but he's so big. He's getting to where he needs to be in the run blocking game. He's doing a good, solid job. He is part of the reason. And listen, the entire offensive line for Kansas City this year, all the way across the board, has done an excellent job of blocking in the running game, creating some holes, sustaining those blocks. They're not dominating. That's one reason I don't necessarily advise them to run the football more than they already are, but they're doing a good job. It's a tool in the box for the Kansas City Chiefs to use. It's something that Eric Bieniemy can use, and Orlando Brown has been a solid part of that. Okay, no doubt to it. He was good at run blocking when he was in Baltimore. He's continued that here at left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. You slide down to these 2 categories, and these are both pass blocking, okay? First of all, and again, this is something I don't mean to overkill this, but we are looking ahead to the next offseason here. And this is something I've covered before. Versus average defensive ends. When Orlando Brown is pass blocking against those guys, he's doing a pretty solid job. He's not doing horrible. He's win some, lose some. He's doing a solid job there. It's not great, but he's doing an okay job. As a matter of fact, Orlando Brown has looked better over the past 4 or 5 games, give or take, than he did earlier in the season. Part of that might be because he's improving, but most of that is because he's playing more of these average defensive ends. And that's a wide range right there. Again, some of those are career backup linebackers who have no chance to get around Brown at all because A, he's so big, and B, they have no speed. They are below average speed-wise when it comes to the NFL. They have no chance. Others of them are guys who have decent NFL speed and they are able on some plays to get around Brown, but not others. So against the average defensive ends, which is more of what he's played against the past few games, Orlando Brown is holding his own, and he's win some, lose some. Here's where the trouble starts. When you get down to this third category versus quick edge, not even elite edges, just quick edge rushers, Orlando Brown basically has no chance, no shot at stopping these guys at all on any play. Now, that's harsh, that's cruel, I get it, but this is what we're seeing on the video week in, week out. We saw it against Myles Garrett against the Browns early in the season. We saw it against Joey Bosa for the Chargers. We saw it a couple of weeks ago with Micah Parsons, even though Parsons spent most of the game on the other side. He didn't go up against Brown that often, but when he did, Brown had no shot at stopping Parsons. Even Josh Sweat, who's not an elite edge rusher, but an athletic edge rusher for the Eagles, Jerry Hughes for the Bills, you name it. Anybody in that top, say, 40 of edge rushers who have this quick type edge speed, Orlando Brown just has no shot at stopping these guys. You might say, well, a lot of people struggle against Myles Garrett and Joey Bosa and Micah Parsons, and you're absolutely right. A lot of people struggle. But there's a huge difference versus struggling, where you win some of the battles and you lose some of the battles, and what Orlando Brown's going through. And Orlando Brown is just having no success at all stopping these guys on any play. It's left, right, left, right. He has no shot. Part of that is because he's so big, he's very slow as well, which, by the way, I expect my tackle to be slow, but he's also slow-footed. He has very slow feet. He does not have quick feet. And to cover it up, to end it all up, he plays very high. I'm sure you've noticed this just in the average game. He plays very high. He doesn't get very low to the ground. And part of that is he's such a big guy. I mean, he is a massive mountain of a man. And that comes in handy in the run game. And it comes in handy when you're going against a guy who's smaller and slow. But that completely reverses. That script completely changes when you're going up against any kind of an edge rusher. They don't even have to be elite. And that's the problem. Where somebody like, say, Eric Fisher over the past several seasons for Kansas City, against this group right here, he would win some, lose some. Generally, he would have a decent day. You know, maybe give up a sack or 2 sacks, maybe give up a hold. But on all the other plays, he's holding his own for 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. And with Orlando Brown, it's just not the case. It's 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, and boom. Not only is the guy already by Brown, the guy is already on top of Patrick Mahomes. It is that different, and that's the difference here. And this is where the problems start for Orlando Brown. This is why, if it's me, and I think the Kansas City Chiefs will never admit this in public, but they've got to be talking about it behind closed doors. They're seeing the same thing I'm seeing. They've got to be second-guessing the trade, and they've got to be thinking, all right, now financially speaking, if I could use financial terms for a second, we've got to reverse ourselves out of this position. We've got to reverse ourselves out of this trade. And that's what I would be doing. There's zero chance, absolutely none, if I were GM, and that I would be paying a large deal to Orlando Brown if I were the Chiefs. Zero chance that I would be paying him anything, almost no kind of money at all. Absolutely no chance of that $13 to $20 million a season cap hit. Absolutely none. No chance if I were it. Matter of fact, I feel so strongly about this. I think if I were the general manager of the Chiefs, even if the owner told me to, I might just quit my job before I would hand out that kind of money to left tackle based on what we're seeing here. Now, the season isn't over. Orlando Brown, like any other player, can improve, but I don't expect to see a large improvement here. I just don't expect to see him all of a sudden, based on what we've seen, be able to stop these kinds of players. It was actually true in Baltimore. And when I made the trade analysis, I did a video, I think in August, just analyzing the trade. And I said that, you know, while I'm sure he's a good player, I really didn't like the trade for financial reasons and for draft pick reasons. I would rather not have done the trade, but I understood why Kansas City did it. In all honesty, I didn't do enough homework because little seeds of this were buried back in the Baltimore videos. You see the exact same things. Now, Baltimore did a great job disguising it. Because they run the football so much, they don't actually throw the ball deep as much, anywhere near as much as Kansas City does. So it just wasn't as big of a factor. But you could see it versus those quick edges. Again, Orlando Brown, right tackle, left tackle, didn't matter. He struggles against those quick edges. So much so that it has caused huge problems for the Kansas City offense this year. It is by far the biggest reason that they've struggled. It's not Mahomes regressing. It's not them being too impatient. It's not them. It's not too deep. That's an absolute joke. For any analyst who's on TV talking about too deep safety as being the reason that the Kansas City Chiefs offense has struggled this year, that is an absolute joke. It is just not the case. All right, the troubles all start right here at left tackle. And oh, by the way, right tackle hasn't been a whole lot better. Okay, whether it's been Niang or Wiley or Remmers, they are slightly better, but not a lot. They've struggled here too. But Wiley, Remmers, I think, is out for the season now. Wiley has been somewhat more consistent than Brown, but not by a lot. It's been a struggle too at right tackle as well this year. Okay, absolutely no question. So both of these tackle spots have been pretty weak for Kansas City this year, especially as opposed to the three interior offensive lineman spots. But no question about it. The reason that the Chiefs offense has struggled this year has been the two tackle spots, and specifically and mostly the left tackle spot, and that specifically stems from the trouble with the quick edge rushers, okay? And that's been it. Now the Chiefs might say, well, the Chiefs were slow to adjust. Well, they really weren't. They were ahead of the curve here, shooting right out of the gap. Those first 2 or 3 games of the season, you could see the Kansas City Chiefs doing a lot of things, even more than they would normally do them, simply because they were trying to disguise this. But it took about 2, 3, 4 weeks for NFL defenses to figure out that the Kansas City Chiefs were weak at the tackle spots, and specifically left tackle against the edge rushers, and they just started lighting them up, okay? It took them a while, but that's why you've seen the struggles. Now, you might say, well, why aren't you picking on these guys here? Well, Kansas City didn't make a big trade for Niang or Wiley or Remmers, and they aren't thinking about handing a lot of money to Orlando Brown in the offseason. So that's why we're doing an Orlando Brown video, because it affects the Kansas City Chiefs so much for the next several seasons, because Kansas City is already up against it financially. With the Mahomes deal alone, they are pushing a snowball up the mountain to a great degree financially. And then when you add in the other contracts they've got already, whether it's Chris Jones or Tyreek Hill or whoever, they have even more of a heavier financial burden at the top end, and now you're thinking about paying Orlando Brown, okay? So I wouldn't do it. There's absolutely no chance. There is zero chance that I would pay Orlando Brown a large contract, unless, and the only caveat, the only asterisk I'll put on this, if over the rest of the season, not against these guys I don't care, if over the rest of the season, if he shows a significant improvement against fast, quick edge rushers, then I might reconsider the money deal. But even then, I don't like the money. So I would be trading Orlando Brown probably through a franchise tag, and then trade him the same way they did for D Ford a couple of seasons ago. That would be my advice. Now, I've got to cover this too, okay? And again, I don't like being negative, but this has got to come into it. Now, Pro Football Focus, I know a lot of you like to roll over there. I love it too, okay? If you go over to Pro Football Focus, you are going to find, and I'm not allowed to give out the grades, so I will not do that. You are going to find Orlando Brown actually has a good grade for tackle. I think somewhere in the top 25, top 30 in the league. And he actually has a good passing grade too, okay, in terms of pass blocking. And so it's a fair question, okay? If, Ben, you were sold down on Orlando Brown and his pass blocking abilities, why does Pro Football Focus have such a good grade on him? And why do they have him ranked somewhere in the top 20, 25 of tackles in the league? And that's a fair question. Let me start with this. I love Pro Football Focus. I encourage you to roll over there and look at the grades all the time. I like the work that they do. I don't agree with everything they put out, but I like the NFL grades that they put out. But here's why my assessment of Orlando Brown is so much different than the grades that you'll find on Pro Football Focus. And here's the reasons. Number one, PFF makes no allowances for matchups. In other words, they don't worry about, as far as I know, I've looked and looked through the website, I cannot find where they worry about who Brown is matched up against that day. The only thing they're worried about is, did Brown have a good performance on that play or a bad one? Okay, they make no allowance for, did he go up against an average guy on that play, basically had the day off that day, or was he up against Myles Garrett? The other thing they don't allow for is they don't allow any predicting. So if the Kansas City Chiefs are doing everything they can to disguise the fact that Brown is struggling and Mahomes is getting rid of the ball at 2 to 2.5 seconds on every single play, instead of trying to drag the play out to 4 seconds, where in which case Brown would be getting beat every single time, they don't allow for that predicting, okay? They don't allow for the fact, and they shouldn't. They're grading what actually happened on each and every play. And like I said, as the season has gone on, Brown is playing more of these average guys who have either average or below average NFL speed. And that's another reason why you're seeing the Pro Football Focus grade look good. And the final reason is this. They don't, as far as I can tell, and again, I don't want to speak for Pro Football Focus, as far as I can tell, as I look through the websites, I look at the grades, they don't take away points if somebody's getting help blocking. For instance, if Orlando Brown is up against one of these quick edges and he's getting wore out the entire game, and the Chiefs start sending the tight end over to help block, or they send the running back over to help block, or they start running the ball away from these edge rushers, no points are taken off of Orlando Brown's grade for that day. So he may actually be getting a lot of help on the blocking side, and he still gets a decent grade because Mahomes wasn't sacked on the play, or because Mahomes wasn't actually touched on the play, even though Mahomes knows that pressure is coming. Now that's a messy way for me to talk about it, and again, as quickly as I've done, I understand I may not be fully satisfying that. But when you look at the difference between what Pro Football Focus is coming up with, they grade what actually happens on every single play. They don't allow for matchups. They don't allow for what would have happened a full second later, and they also don't allow for they don't allow for the help blocking, the chip blocking, and the help blocking, and the double team. They don't allow for any of that. No points, as far as I know, are taken off for that. So that's the difference. But when you look at the video, it's very easy to see. You can click on any of the YouTube videos you can find about the Chiefs playing into these games, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. If you go back to the Baltimore season last year and you click on Orlando Brown and you start looking at the video, you see the same stuff. Good in the running game, decent, struggling but decent, holding his own against average guys, and then no chance here against the edge rushers. Now you might say, well, Ben, who's going to trade for the guy? Okay, if you're so down on him and the Chiefs want to get rid of him, is there any trade value left? And the answer is yes. Don't forget, he did fairly well in Baltimore under that offense in which they run the football a lot. A lot of their passes are short yardage passes here and there. When Lamar Jackson passes the ball downfield, a lot of times he's doing so after rolling out. Lamar Jackson is an insane athlete. There are teams out there like the Ravens who would have an interest in Orlando Brown. And while they may not give up as much in draft picks as they did in the offseason, the Chiefs could get some draft picks back here because some teams prefer to run the football a lot, and they would be more than happy to give up a couple of draft picks for Orlando Brown. So that's my assessment. If some of you disagree with that, by all means post it in the comments. I won't jump into an argument or debate with you about that. But the whole point is this. You're Kansas City. What's wrong with the offense? Tackle's wrong with the offense. How do we get better? Well, one way we do that is we trade away Orlando Brown and we bring in somebody else. Listen, I am so uncomfortable with what I'm seeing on video here. I wouldn't even be happy with left tackle next season, even if the money was rookie salary. The clock here, this 2 to 2.5 seconds, is too thin for the Chiefs to operate any kind of a decent offense, much less the high volume, downfield, vertical threat offense that they've run for the last 3 seasons prior to this one. So even if you took the money out of it, and that's the big consideration, but even if you took the money out of it, I would still be in favor of doing this moving forward. That would be my assessment. Okay, so I may do another video on this in the off season with Orlando Brown. Certainly, again, there's still several games to go in the regular season. If he starts looking better against these kinds of players, I'll go back and reassess the whole thing. I'll say, hey, Orlando Brown's changing. He's got his footwork a lot quicker, or he's figured out some way. We haven't seen that at all, but if he starts to improve over the last few games of the season, I'll come back and do another video. I'll probably still be in favor of trading him just for the money alone, but I would be much more understanding of the Chiefs giving him a lot of money if he's showing a lot of improvement here against these kinds of players. All right, I think I've covered everything that I need to cover here. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week. Bye.